launching its National and Provincial Elections campaign for 2024, the Electoral Commission of South Africa, or the IEC, has urged South Africans who are eligible to vote and not yet on the voters' roll to register in the upcoming registration weekend that will be held on the 18th and 19th of November. Now, currently, there are over 26 million eligible voters on the voters' roll, with women having a greater representation of more than 14 million against around 11 million men. Now, the age categories with the highest representation is 30 to 39 years old, with more than 6 million voters. And of course, there's a further breakdown of all of those numbers. But to help us wade through this, discuss this further, we're joined here in studio by the Chairperson of the Electoral Commission, Mr. Mosotho Moepya. Thanks so much for your time. Welcome to Morning Live.
Good to be with you. Thank you for inviting us, and good morning to all South Africans.
Mr. Moepya, we were just, talking off air about the significance of an event like the one you had yesterday. Yes. You know, if you read the press statement and you read, what it is about, it probably is like, it's not that significant. But we were talking about how this actually starts to prepare the ground for elections.
An event like the one we had yesterday is an important event. It's a low-key thing, but in truth, it's a great marker for an election that a country is going to have. It raises awareness that there is an election just about to happen. But it puts people, parties, citizens, it raises the questions they may be thinking about. People who are not registered, who have hitherto thought, I don't perhaps need to register. It gives them some thoughts to review the decisions they may have taken. It creates opportunities for people in the country to imagine a South Africa they would want, to give parties, some work to say, how do we get people to come and take our service offering, our policy propositions? And it begins to drive all of us to this common goal. It is unlike just quietly issuing a statement and saying, we will be preparing for an election and these are the things that are going to happen. But it also helps us as society to begin to raise the questions we need to raise, to have discussions we need to have in the manner that you and I are having. The country is talking about the elections now. And I'm sure some of those questions are going to be difficult, but there are many that are going to help this country to have an environment that is conducive for the holding of those elections next year. It's important.
And I think our question of the day has been quite helpful, quite instructive in this regard, because some of the issues that people raise actually point to perhaps some blind spots, some weaknesses, challenges that need to be overcome. For example, voter education. Someone in one of the earlier ex-posts was talking about the need for identity documents. So let's talk about that in terms of your collaboration with other departments, government departments that also have a role to play in an election.
We have come a long way as the Electoral Commission, and many of the government departments, civil society, the media, yourselves, we have embedded relationships that are deep and will only serve this country well. Home Affairs, for example. Home Affairs will operate every hour that we will operate when we do election work. Whether we register voters, whether we have elections, they will open when we open, and I think in all instances, close when we close. That is important. But they will also follow us when we go to schools, when we go to universities, when we do outreaches, and there are people, many people that we seek to register. They will always be there with us. One of the major developments that we are grateful for is the fact that we no longer have any backlogs in terms of people that have applied for identity documents and are unable to register. we get assistance on the day and people can vote on the day. And that is a thing we're grateful for. So I'm saying that the way in which we work with our stakeholders has been improved immensely, whether it's on social media, online, and in the relationships that institutions have developed. We are grateful for. But I'm not saying that we have arrived. I think we must continue to seek ways to improve the way in which we work. We cannot complain up front and say, Home Affairs, you've not been there. No, and I'm not saying, we are the marketing wing today, we speak for them. But I'm saying that to the extent that we work, we are satisfied that there's good work we are doing.
And I think that's important when you speak about these outreach programs and going to schools, and I suppose also more importantly going to rural areas, especially the farthest flung ones, because those are the people that struggle to actually access some of the services that government does provide. And sometimes people are not aware of the services that are available to them. So the youth, for example, who may think that they need to pay for an identity document, whereas the first one is actually free.
Yes. So we do say those things on our WhatsApp chats, for example. When people ask about how do I get to be registered, we find out if they have an identity document. If they are doing it for the first time, they shouldn't be worried about costs and things like that. And we connect them with departments. These are facilities that modern communication technologies have made possible for us to use, and we are trying to use them to good effect. Yesterday, when we launched, one of the things that we launched was a contact center where, there would be people that you would call toll-free and ask questions, but where you would also chat with them online and they will direct you. It's not just about accessing registration and voting. It's about a lot more associated with that work. Who's your ward councillor? Where are by-elections going to be held? News that relate to the work that we do and the concerns or governance at a local level, so to speak.
There are so many questions, Mr. Moepya. There is, of course, the question of independent candidates who will now be eligible as well to stand for the general election, provincial and presidential. Now, firstly, there's, of course, some litigation that's still outstanding in that regard. And secondly, how is this going to impact what we are accustomed to when we go to vote? Because usually, when you would vote in the general election, you'd get a provincial ballot and you get the presidential ballot. And you could, for example, vote wherever you were in the province, in the country. How is any of that going to change?
I think you raise a few important matters. Let me break them down. The first one is the issue in relation to the clarity that is awaited from the Constitutional Court consideration. The matter that was heard by the court, I think early in September. It's an important one. You will recall that in that matter, one of the major contestations was the fact that, or clarity sought was the amount or number, the quantum of signatures that would be required by new parties that have not had representations before in the National Assembly or provincial legislatures, as well as independents. That is an important matter, but it's a very complex matter as well, because that quantum determines the delicate balance of avoiding frivolity on the one hand in elections, and on the other hand, ensuring that you do not, prohibit candidates that would otherwise contribute meaningfully. It's a delicate balance. And what that should be, there are many other factors linked to it. For example, a deposit. One has to be a South African citizen, they must be registered. There are many things that are linked to it. And it's just the one consideration that was before the court. So when the court determines, as we all eagerly await for it, we still have to balance this with many other considerations, and that makes the matter important. But in relation to the other issue that you raised, the important one, the introduction of candidates required that the ballot paper of the National Assembly, as we have known it until now, would now need to be in two parts. We would have to have a regional component, a region to national, and a national to national. In the past, the national ballot paper was really, where we work, was counted twice, in that it was counted twice for the seats in the National Assembly, which are 400. 200 are regional to national, and the other 200 are national to national. On the national ballot paper, you would vote for a party anywhere in the country, and then it'll count to the first 200, the national to national. But where you vote from, if you voted from Gauteng for the National Assembly, it will then be counted for the Gauteng region to the National Assembly. But now we can't do that, because on the regional ballot, we have independent candidates, but we don't have them on the national to national ballot. So we needed to separate that. And that change and its significance, we will be talking about from now until the election, so that both candidates, parties, and citizens understand the significance of such a change. It is fundamental.
Mr. Moepya, we have to leave it there for today. But thank you so much. And I think we need to get you in, because when we speak about the civic education and voter education specifically, as you said, we have a very big role to play as the fourth estate. That was Mr. Mosotho Moepya, the chairperson of the Electoral Commission, talking to us about the readiness to conduct next year's national and provincial elections.